Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the presenters this month and also the AGM later on. Okay, today we are honored to have two special award-winning guests, award-winning authors, and they are going to make a little presentation for us about their books. So first we have Jane Cadwallader. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Yes. And she will talk about her book, Harriet Holmes and the Pirate Treasure. So I think we should start your presentation first.
Okay, great. All right, let me just see. Let's see if I can get my little presentation up here. Can everybody see that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so there are two Harriet Holmes. Let me just check now. I know that at 20 minutes, I'm not going to, if I start going too long, I shall stop because I would like to get some questions at the end if it's possible. So these two books about Harriet, the intrepid girl detective, daughter of Sherlock Holmes. But you didn't know he had a daughter, but he did. What I've been asked to talk about actually is to speak a bit about what the target audience, like who the books are aimed at, who these books are aimed at, what the grading process of the vocabulary list, what I use to write, where I get the inspiration for the stories, and reader feedback. I was saying earlier that unfortunately I'd love to get a lot more reader feedback than I do, but so I've just actually copied from the Extensive Reading Foundation their reader feedback. And then hopefully some time for questions. So, okay. First of all, the target audience. I think that it's true. I mean, I think these are actually, it's true for young children and young teenagers. I think it's also true for most people, actually, that they like a story to be a story. You know, very often in English language teaching, we tell stories that aren't really stories. They're more situations. I think that's very frustrating for children, because I think they really want a story to be something exciting and that has a kind of a climax and characters. And so I think that's one thing that I think is very important. They read for meaning. They're not, unlike adults, are not usually very interested in dissecting language. They're not going to say, yeah, look at that. They've used the present perfect. You know, they're more interested in getting the meaning out of the story rather than worrying about the language. They like a challenge, but also they like what they're good at, and they're good at what they like. So it's very important that when you're writing for this age group, really, I think actually it's true for all age groups, has to be something that is going to catch their imaginations and their interest. And they don't like to be lectured to. I mean, I think there's sometimes we're a bit too moralistic in our writing, because we want to kind of teach the whole child. We want to teach life skills and emotional and different types of literacy, but we can get a bit too kind of moralistic and things. I don't think they don't like being lectured to. I kind of always, what I try to do is make my characters attractive and make them do things that I think are socially good. So with the idea that the children would like the characters and therefore would take on the ideas and the characteristics of the characters. Anyway, so then I don't know if I don't know if it's just me who can't see let me just see if I can move you guys down a bit. I'm going to, where can I put you? Down here, maybe. How do I grade the language, and where do I get my vocabulary list? Well, a lot I get from the Cambridge Young. I have this book, oh, sorry, let me go back one. I was trying to get the pointer. This handbook for teachers is like a little bit my Bible, actually. I carry it everywhere with me, and I do use the lists there, and I do try to cover lexical sets which are in this book. And I think, you know, it's quite, sometimes it's a bit old-fashioned, but generally it covers the right kind of vocabulary for the age group, even if they're not doing starters. Do you do starters, movers and flyers in Japan?
It's
I was doing a bit of research on...
Not as popular. We have local Japanese qualifications, which are more popular, but there are some schools who do teach for it, but not as much as overseas.
Not as much as yeah. Well, I mean, it's not the only vocabulary list I use, but this is a useful one. Then I think what is really important when you're grading language and choosing vocabulary is this Nuttall cycle of the weak reader: doesn't understand, reads slowly, doesn't enjoy reading, doesn't read much, you know, and the virtuous cycle, where they understand better, reads faster, enjoys reading, and reads more. I mean, this is, I think, really important when you're writing, because my assumptions about the types of vocabulary and language is really to do a lot of already known, that I think the children will be able to read fluently without stopping, without having to kind of work out what a word means, but just to be able to read fluently and understand what the story is about. Also, I try to do things which I think are useful at their level. So kind of common words which people use every day. I also try to include some words that they can work out from the context, which is kind of the development of the reading skill. So they can work out either from the words around it or from the illustrations. And then there are inevitably words that which I figure will be new, but they need to know it in order to understand the story. And then I put those into the picture dictionary. You know, in the Eli books, there's a sort of flap which has a picture dictionary. So I put those words into the picture dictionary so that they can reference quickly. And let me see, why is that not going? Oops. Oh, I think it's because I keep putting these in the, let me just put you up here again. So this is an example of a picture dictionary. So it's things like cliff, earrings, garage, mattress, mechanic, you know, pocket. These things don't actually come up in a lot of lists, but they're actually very useful vocabulary. And they're also vocabulary that they need to know in order to follow the story. Okay, so where do I get my inspiration for writing? Well, the first thing is I run. This is me in Uganda, in the middle of a run. See, red in the face. What I do is I put into my head the characters and maybe the language and the area that I want to write about. And then I run, and the ideas just come to me as I'm running. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do when I can't run anymore, but I do get a lot of my inspiration from running. Then this particular series of books of Harriet, I used to read a lot as a child, and I loved these. And I didn't actually read Enid Blyton. My mother wouldn't let me read Enid Blyton because she said it was not good English. And I used to read these Lonely Pine Five, which is very similar in a way to Enid Blyton, maybe a bit less kind of childish. But I used to read these Malcolm Saville books, and I loved them. And it was like adventures, mysteries with a group of children who solved the mysteries. And also another thing I loved was Narnia. You know, these stories of these children and the adventures that they had in this fantasy world. So, you know, and then my mother was very fond of whodunits, you know, these movies like the Murder on the Orient Express and things. And especially when she became very old and I used to go and visit her in a care home, we used to sit and watch these movies. So I've got quite a lot of background of kind of detective, kind of leaving clues and following red herrings and that kind of kind of novel, and at the same time of children being resolving mysteries without the adults intervening. And the other thing that is a real inspiration to me is the illustrator I work with. We've worked together for many years, and actually a lot of the time when I'm writing, I'm imagining how Gustavo will illustrate what I'm writing. So I kind of write in a way for his illustrations, because he's a brilliant illustrator. So I just try to, like, for example, this picture here, which I don't know whether you're all in the way as well, but this one, you see this, they're making a plan over breakfast. And this lady back here, now she's actually a villain, but you don't know at this point, but you find out later. But then when you go back, you can see, actually, look at how she's listening in on them with this kind of sinister face. So he's really an inspiration to me. So I mean, when I write, a lot of the time I'm writing thinking how he's going to illustrate it. Let me see, I'm going to put you back up here again. All right, and then this I think that the children will, these pictures are very evocative. So I think the kids can imagine they're there down in the bottom of this cave with Harriet, listening to the home help and this wicked neighbor Mackinhead talking about the treasure of the pirate. And here again, they can kind of follow her down. So I think that one of the inspirations, one of the things that kind of leads me when I'm writing is thinking how Gustavo is going to illustrate. So I think that's another. Okay, then I am very always even though I said at the beginning, children don't like don't like kind of moralistic stories, but I do think it's really important. We've only got a few years left before 2030, and these sustainable goals are so important. I do try to include in every story that I write one of the sustainable goals, sustainable development goals. And in this one, it's gender equality. You think about it, detectives, are they usually men or women? So my thing is like, let's have a girl detective who's like very attractive, very kind of dynamic and fun, and the kids will enjoy it, the boys will enjoy it as well as the girls. But it's a girl. So I think that's like, and it's like not in your face, but it's there underneath. This thing of just trying to kind of change the way children look at the world, so that they're not as limited as we are. They're better ideas than we do. And also, I'm also always try to include thinking skills in my stories. And actually, these stories really lend themselves to it, because they have to analyze, they have to look for the clues and make hypotheses, and then test their hypotheses against what's happening in the story. So it's a very good detective stories are very good for developing thinking skills in children. So, and one thing that I really wanted to do in this book was to include something a bit scientific. I'm not very scientific, I have to say, but I wanted to include something, and this whole thing of a ghost, and the lady seeing the ghost, but it can't be a ghost because we know there are no ghosts. And so this thing of the children going to spend a night with Lady Frankie, and she's saying the ghost of they woke up to a terrible cry. The ghost of Lady Emily was at the window crying, "Where is Captain Mac? Let me in and go away. This house is mine." "It's Lady Emily's ghost," cried Lady Frankie. And then our intrepid detective says, "Oh no," said Harriet, "it's a Pepper's ghost." And then it says at the bottom, look it up, find out what is a Pepper's ghost. So I took that up, and in the activities, I actually teach the children. This is a Pepper's ghost, by the way. It's all to do with reflected light. So you shine the light on the person, and it's reflected onto the glass. It has to be at an angle of 45 degrees, and you can see there, and it looks like a ghost. So what I did in the end was to teach them how to make a Pepper's ghost. You can make a Pepper's ghost on a tablet or on a telephone. So this is the instructions. They have to put them in order, but these are the instructions of how to make a Pepper's ghost. And here I made a very, very rudimentary Pepper's ghost. Just to show you, you cut out. Well, what I do is I measure it on card, and then I cut it out, and then I cut it out on, this is, you remember how we used to use overhead projectors? I bet you guys are all too young, eh? But when we used to give talks, we used to give them on this overhead projectors, and we had these overhead projector sheets. So I bought some of these. They're called, what are they called now? Can't remember anyway. I got some of these. You can also do it with like plastic sheet for on a photograph, a photograph picture. So it I won't tell you well, I mean, you have to measure, it's also mathematical, because you have to work out. I think my telephone was 7 centimeters, so the base of the trapezoid had to be 7 centimeters. Then the height was half of the width plus 1 centimeter, so it was 4.5, and then the top was 1 centimeter. Anyway, here is and then you cut out 4 and you stick them together, and you get this. Can you see here? Okay, and now I'm going to show you how it works. Then you look in internet, and you just put in holographic video, and there's lots of them you can choose from. And here's the one that I chose. Okay, so what you do is you have your little trapezoid, you have your little Pepper's ghost thing. You put it on top of your holographic video, and look what happens. Can you see? Yeah, this is really fun for kids. No, it's like there's the, you see there's the there's the Pepper's ghost. Anyway, it's a really fun thing to do with kids. They love it, and it's like very easy for them to do. And it's something that sort of linked into the book, but uses also mathematical. They have to sort of measure and cut, and I did it very rudimentary. I just got some plastic sheets, some sellotape. If you look in internet, they give you lots of like special glue and all this, but I just did it with sellotape and plastic sheets, and it works. It maybe could be more beautiful, but it works. Anyway, lastly, reader feedback. I've just kind of highlighted what I think. It was very interesting. I was going to say, actually, which one of this was written by a teacher and which one by a child? You can see very quickly by the English. But I just think that what's important for me to pick out from this, to make me feel that I achieved what I wanted to achieve, is this thing. It's an enjoyable character. I mean, I think that Harriet is enjoyable. She's fun. She's like, she's not a sort of, she's a fun character. And it keeps the reader engaged without overwhelming them, because the language is simple. It's not kind of so that it's a real struggle to understand. They can understand it. They can read it quite fluently. And then this obviously from a child, makes us good at thinking. Yes, I like that. Teaches us about critical thinking. It makes us good at thinking. It uses simple words that I can understand. Good. Has a good plot, is very exciting, also very good, and has clear pictures that make me understand the story, also I think very important. So these two things made me feel, well, at least for these two people, I achieved what I set out to do in writing Harriet and the Pirate Treasure. Okay, so that's just a very very quick sort of run through of answering those points. And I don't know whether you have some questions you'd like to ask. Has anybody got anything you'd like to ask? I see oh my goodness, Jane. Wait a minute. So the next thing is a question.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation. And my apologies, I forgot to introduce you before you started your presentation. Just please give me just a short time before we go on to questions. Jane has written a lot of books in the primary ESL books. She's also written she's written a lot for ELL, but she's also written for Oxford, Macmillan, and Richmond. She is a teacher trainer, and of course, she understands the importance of using extensive reading in her teaching. She's been writing from 2008, and her writings include children's rights and rights to education. And as she introduced in her presentation, she spends time in Uganda, which was interesting for me, from Japan. She also works with the local government to improve the lives of children in the natural district in Western Uganda. Very sorry to introduce you after your presentation.
That's
And
okay.
We'd like to have some questions. Any questions from anyone? Sandra.
Yes.
I've always got lots of questions. First question is there really a Bakonzi tree?
Oh, there is. There is.
Because I have students ask me that after they read the story, they always ask me, is there really a Bakonzi tree? And there's nothing on internet that I could find. So
yes. Well, it's not called a Bakonzi. I shortened it. It's like the actual full word is in there. If you look in the book, it's Omugab, something or other. It's a much longer name, but it's where I was traveling in Rwanda, and the guide showed us that tree and told us about, that is, that tree is a very special tree because because nobody cuts it down because it smells like wind. So when you told me that, I said, I have got to write a story about that because kids love it. But no, it's a tree in Rwanda.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so glad I'll be able to tell the kids that, because
and actually King Kambogo was the name of the guide, and his wife was called Winnie. So I used their names.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but it is true, yes.
I think that including the SDGs is really, really important. And I think in Japan, a lot of kids are taught about the SDGs at school. So it resonates quite a lot with students who are reading the books to have some reference to the SDGs that they're learning about at school. So that's really, really good. So like the water one that you did a couple of years ago, that was just wonderful for kids who are actually learning about those things at school to be able to say, well, here, read this. This is about that.
Yeah. In fact, for next year, I'm going to write one about air. I've done water. I've done forests. Now I'm going to do air. That's my next, and that will include lots of stuff for the SDGs as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I must say that Rumble Dumble is probably my favorite character so far. And the Rumble Dumble in the Big Storm is just really hits that really hits home with a lot of kids. I think that's really, really good story.
Do you have flooding in Japan?
We do. Yes, we do.
I mean, at the moment, it's like, it's horrific in some parts in Spain, for example, in Valencia, more than 200 people died.
Yeah.
Like, it's like this thing of flooding is like, it's really become a really big issue.
Yeah. It's really, really amazing story. So yeah. Sorry to ask all the questions. Anyway, if anyone else has got something to say.
Sandra, which book was that you were referring to?
Which one?
You just said, you mentioned the name of a book. I didn't.
Well, I talked about Uncle Jack and the Baconzi Tree.
No, after
and
that.
Rumble Dumble and the Big Storm.
Oh, which publisher?
Ellie.
Ellie.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about Ellie books. Yeah.
Okay, no, I didn't realize that. Okay, so you mentioned
Yeah.
she does other publishers as well.
Yeah, but not really for readers. I've actually written some readers for Richmond long time ago. But I
Okay.
think me and Gustavo have written over, I think it's, I don't know if it's over 40 or over 50 Ellie stories. We've written a lot for Ellie.
Got it.
Mm. Any other questions? Or I've just nobody got any questions.
Any questions or any comments? Well, comment for me. I love the illustrations of your books, and I've heard from other authors that they work closely with their illustrators, and they kind of work out the imagination and the story together. Is that how you also work with your illustrator?
Yes, some of the stories, the inspiration comes from him. Gustavo says to me, why don't we write a book about, I don't know, well, the whole idea of Granny Fix-It came from Gustavo. Gustavo said, let's do a series about a granny who's got a yellow bag and she can take anything out of it. So some of the stories actually come from him. The idea comes from him. Some of them we work on together. And sometimes it's like what I was saying about Harriet. When I was writing Harriet, I kind of, as I'm writing, I'm always imagining, because we've worked so much together that I know what he'll illustrate, how he will illustrate things, and how what sort of grabs his fancy when he likes illustrating. So it's like we work very much as a team.
Thank you.
He's lovely. He's a lovely person. He's from Argentina.
Could I just make a comment? Sorry, Jane, I just wanted to say it was lovely to meet you today and hear about your inspiration. I wish that I was a runner as well, but I'm not. I'm more of a, let's have a cup of tea and think about this kind of person. But it was lovely to hear about how you get your ideas for your stories. Thank you.
Well, some people, you don't have to run. Some people get their ideas in the middle of the night, or when they wake up in the morning, they suddenly wake up. Somebody told me that what they do is they go to bed and think, I would like to write a story about this, this, and this. And when they wake up in the morning, the story's there. So don't worry, you can still have your cup of tea.
Thank goodness, because I'm not giving that up.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Well, I just want to let you know, you mentioned at the beginning you'd like to get more feedback from readers. So I just checked. Most of your books have about 300 to 500 reviews on X Reading. So I can gladly give you, a lot of them are great or I like that story. But some of them are more substantial. So
I would love to see them. How do I see those, Bob?
Just email me. I'll give you my email address. I thought I created an account for you in the past, but I can't find it. But I'll definitely create one, and then you can just log in. Anybody can see the ratings and the reviews.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. I would really love that. I would love that actually, because that would also help me to think what works and what doesn't work. So that would be great.
Yeah. They're not all in fact, most of them are not very insightful, but you'll find, I said this, out of 500 of them, there'll be a few that will be useful for you.
Great. That's lovely. I would really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Okay, guys, I think I've taken up enough of your time. So it's been lovely to speak to you. Nobody else wants to say anything, no? No, let me go to bed. Look, and it's the middle of the night here. I'm going to go to bed. I'm also a bit kind of like what's it called? Jet lagged, because I just arrived from London the day before yesterday. So between the fact that it's now 11:30, and actually for me it's 11:30 in the morning.
Wow.
It's like really, but it's been really a pleasure to speak to you. It's lovely.
I'm sorry,
lovely.
Where are you? I didn't hear in the beginning. Where are you now?
I'm in New Zealand.
Okay, got it. That's not the only place it could be later than Japan.
Yeah, but it's lovely. It's just lovely to think that I'm speaking to you and you're all in Japan. It's just great. That is one very good thing that the internet has done for us. There are lots of things that the internet has done which are awful, but this thing of being able to speak to people, like to be able to communicate like this with people who are so far away is actually wonderful. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure. Good night.
Good night, and thank you very much. A
Honor-
big applause to
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Jane.
Bye. Goodbye. Good night. Bye.
Good night. All right, so we'd like to move on to our next author, which is Sarah. Let me introduce you first because I forgot to introduce Jane before the presentation. So Sarah Gudgeon is from Manchester in the north of England and has been living and working in Italy from since 2002. So we kind of have a international kind of authors today. After a degree in journalism, Sarah went on to train as a TEFL teacher and has managed to successfully combine her two passions, which is helping people to feel more confident in English and writing. In the world of EFL since 2000, Sarah has taught at all levels and is the author of numerous titles. Sorry, for the Italian State School. Wow, that's great. And has a lot of readers in the international teen market. So she's also the member of the Extensive Reading Association currently being set up in Italy. We'd love to hear about that later too. So
Thank you.
so,
Okay. So let me try and share my screen. Thank you for your introduction. Okay, so I've done a slightly different style compared to Jane. Okay, now I'm hoping that this will work. Okay, can you all see my screen? You can? Yep. Okay, I think you should be able to. All right, so like Jane, I was invited to talk about this reader. I've taken a slightly different approach because a little bit linking into what Jane said, I think that kids are not really that bothered about the language and the aims that we have as teachers. Okay, that's our job. We know kind of what we hope they're going to improve by reading certain things and doing certain activities. And I think kids need something that is relatable more than anything. And that's what I always try to do with my materials, okay? In fact, as Jane said, I don't have a lot of reader feedback either, okay? The only comment was that when it won this award in the summer, I think one of the main comments was that kids found it relatable, okay? I have to be honest and say that I, in the past, was always a little bit reluctant to recommend graded readers. Okay, so let me just move on here. Okay, to my, oh, I have to move you guys, otherwise I can't go forward with my, with my presentation. And having exactly the same issues. Here we go. Okay, so the way I want to use my presentation today is to talk about why I think readers are important, okay, why we need to bring, I think, social issues into these readers in today's world, okay, and talk a little bit about how we, oops, no, sorry, I've just done something, okay. So yeah, basically, okay, I was always a bit reluctant to recommend readers to my students because I'd seen that a lot of them available here in Italy anyway, and recommended by teachers in the state schools and available in the libraries were the classics. Now, there's nothing wrong with classics, of course, if you like that genre. But to a lot of teenagers, that begins to feel like homework. Okay. And again, linking in a little bit with what Jane said about that weak reader cycle. If they're not interested, they're not going to read it with ease, and then they begin to think they can't read in English. So I'd always been a bit reluctant to recommend them, and I would buy books in England that were aimed at kids, okay, and retell them to my students in, you know, like a language that was appropriate to their level, and also using and recycling vocabulary, focusing on lexical sets. Personally, I work a lot with the language guidelines set by the Ministry of Education here in Italy when I'm teaching. So I would do that. However, in fact, I wrote a classic myself for Ellie back in, I think, 2007. I retold Oliver Twist. But, you know, I was like, this was written by Charles Dickens. How can I possibly do anything with this, you know? I'm just an English teacher. So I kind of steered clear of readers for a while. Anyway, a couple of years ago, Ellie got back in touch and they asked me, would I be interested in writing an original story? And fortunately, they sent me some samples, okay, actually of something written by Michael Lacey Freeman, who I guess most of you are familiar with. And readers can actually be interesting. Oh, they can actually have a real storyline. So Michael knows this. I was actually inspired by him initially, okay? And since then, we've been in contact. Now, my only remit was to write a story where the main character was a girl, because we'd had a lot of male main characters, again, something that Jane touched on, and with this topic of cyberbullying. Now, all I did literally was sit down and I'm surrounded, I can just show you one, I'm surrounded by mini notebooks, okay, all over my house. I have a passion for notebooks and pens. And they said, write a story. And before I could even kind of digest that, I just sat down with my notepad, probably a cup of tea too. And I just got the idea immediately, literally within 10 minutes, that was it. I had the story for my book, okay? And that is how I work. I generally just regurgitate is the only word I can think of, my ideas onto a piece of paper, and then I refine them later. And it's very important to me that we encourage original stories. And as you can see here in the presentation, representation, because yeah, I'm from the north of England and I'm proud of that, okay? And I think it's great for kids to be exposed to different aspects of British culture. What tends to happen in books is that everything becomes a little London-centric, okay? And there's always this focus on the monarchy and afternoon tea. And people even say to me now, I mean, I've been here 20 years and they, oh, but why did you leave England? They imagine that we're kind of swanning around, you know, with reading the Times and eating cucumber sandwiches. But life in the UK is very, very different to that, especially post-Brexit. Now, I mean, obviously, you guys are outside Europe. I'm not sure, you know, how much that's affected anything for you, but I have certainly seen a change. And basically, you know, life in the North is tough, okay? It's very, very important to recognize that our cultural landscape is changing, okay? And the points you can see here are very, very relevant. Food poverty, cost of living crisis, these are very, very important at the moment, okay? And of course, bullying, unfortunately, is something that has taken on a whole new level. Okay, again, unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with the culture in Japan, but over here in Italy, you know, we have news items, you know, we have kids committing suicide because of online bullying, because there's no getting away from it. They are bombarded, okay? So obviously, we have to tone that down for teen readers. We're not going to talk about suicide. We're not going to go too deep into things, but a little bit through the book, I was kind of hoping to give kids the tools to deal with what does happen in life. Okay, so in terms of inspiration, definitely, I mean, a lot of the stuff in the book comes from my real life. Okay, and literally as I was writing, it was really easy to write because I was envisaging my mother shouting me for tea. Now, again, I've included that because in the north of England, we don't have dinner. Okay, we actually call lunch dinner, and dinner is tea. And we eat our dinner, tea, at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Okay, and it's really strange because even when I moved down to London to train as a teacher, you know, I came home from my day at the college and I was thinking, well, where's the food? There seemed to be no movement in the kitchen, you know, and I actually remember messaging my grandma saying, I'm eating a packet of custard creams in my bedroom because there's no sign of any food. I don't know when we're going to have tea. My grandma was horrified, you know, and I think dinner was served at like 7:30. So the further south you go in the UK, the more you tend to adopt that European culture. Here in Italy, where I've now been for many, many years, we have our dinner anytime between 7 and 8:30. Okay, so it's nice to show these kids. Also, you'll see the glossary includes references to stuff like that. British cuisine is certainly not renowned, let's say, and we do have a very international menu. So we would regularly, when I was a child, my mother would make, I'm sure, anglicized versions of what we thought was very exotic food. But like everything, we adapted it. So as you read the story, I hope that I've created a kind of natural background in which the story can unfold. Okay, so talked about having spag bol for tea and stuff like that. Okay, the other great thing that I got inspiration from was my job as a Saturday girl. Okay, I really did have that uniform that you will see in the book, complete with the little white hat. Okay, and I worked every Saturday afternoon when I was a teenager in this bakery, and Mr. Turner was inspired by Mike, who was my lovely boss and who indeed gave me free cake every Saturday. You know, what was not to love about that job? I have a photo to show you here, actually. Let me just skip forward a moment. Not this one, but the next one. Okay, I have this photo. For privacy, I have permission to use the photo, but I've obscured the faces. This was our uniform, really. This was Mike, who is Mr. Turner. And the really cool thing is, can you believe, my father went to a pub a few months ago in the town in which, near my home, where the bakery was and still is. Okay, Oven King is the name of the bakery. And he got chatting, and he was chatting, I think, to the granddaughter of the owner. Okay, or she's the niece. I'm not sure. My dad wasn't very clear on the parental link here. But the great thing is, we've now, even after all this time, they remember me. My dad actually asked the girl, she asked her dad, who is the younger guy on the left of the photo, for permission, I don't know if he's her uncle or whoever he is, to reproduce the photo. So it really, everything is based on real life because, you know, they tell you to write about what you know. And that's what I know. I know these family values. Now then, the other thing, let me just go back to my original stuff here, is why did I focus particularly, okay, on food poverty? Well, because it is a real issue at the moment in the UK. The cost of living is so high, okay? I have this data here, which is from the Department for Work and Pensions, that 2.3 million families used food banks in 2022, 2023. Again, I'm not sure if you have food banks, but literally they are voluntary associations. And just like in the story, you can turn up, okay? And you can literally do your shopping. Now, we have people in the UK, like in the story, where it's not like in the past where if you were poor, it's because of really unexpected circumstances, or because of maybe health issues in the family. This is where people are working. You can have two parents working. You can have parents on the famous 0 hours contracts. Okay, so there's just not enough money coming in to cover increasing energy bills. Okay, the cost of living, basically. Okay, so I felt it was very important to shine a light, to try and take away some of the stigma. It's nobody's fault if you're poor. Okay, obviously, again, as Jane mentioned, I always focus on these Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them overall. The focus here was on goal number 12. At the back of the book as well, you'll see that there is, for those of you who haven't got the book, okay, there is a little section on food waste, okay, at the back of the book to tie into those goals, okay. There's also another focus on section about bullying. And again, here the idea is to inspire young people. All of these are famous people who were bullied, okay. I mean, we've got Tom Daley, who was very big last year because he was at the Olympics, okay. Millie Bobby Brown, Justin Timberlake, Princess Catherine, okay. These people all experienced bullying. They overcame it. The key message in the story, which is, we'll talk a little bit about the story now, is that anyone can go through hard times. It's important that actually you don't go through it alone. Okay, and we should always try. That is the key thing, to talk, to communicate. Okay, and I also wanted to show you this photo here. So the storyline basically evolves around this girl who lives a very ordinary life, Megan. Okay, the dad loses his job. They start to kind of scrimp and save, but it gets to the point that actually they don't really have any money, and they get the bus to the supermarket. And again, this was inspired by my own experience. I have a specific supermarket in mind, okay? And she goes there with her dad after 6 o'clock. And this is something we don't have in Italy, but it's in the UK. And they are literally yellow sticker items. This is, I knew the title for my book immediately. That's what I wanted to call it, okay? And here, I don't know if I can zoom in on this presentation. I don't think I can. Let me just give you an example. This chicken here, the original price was £6.50 for a cooked chicken. The yellow sticker price goes down to £1.75, okay? So it's a huge saving. I actually sent my poor dad last week to our local supermarket and said, go to the yellow sticker section. I want people to see this is not an invented thing. This is reality, okay? And my poor dad filled his trolley. He said, I had to buy everything then. He said, I couldn't put it all back. So my dad's gone home with a chicken and some cake by the looks of things, okay? And you will see that literally this apple pie here costs 44p. You can get this meat for 75p. So I personally, okay, am a huge fan of yellow stickers when I'm in the UK, not because of food poverty, but to bring me back to the Sustainable Development Goals, to avoid food waste. Okay, now obviously if you're buying meat, you can freeze it, okay, and it's also about trying to, I've done a lot of stuff over the years about Sustainable Development Goals, how to reduce food waste. It's also about attitude, isn't it? Okay, again, in the UK, the supermarkets, there was a new law introduced last year that now they don't put these use by dates on, because as a nation, we had become like, there was a use by date on an item in your fridge. It looked okay, it smelled okay, felt okay, but the sticker said, use by, I don't know, the 22nd of November. 7 o'clock in the morning on the 23rd, you're like, oh my God, there's an alien thing in my fridge, let's throw it out. So it's kind of all interlinked. And I love these yellow stickers because, like in the book, you can have fun with them. You might see an international food that you wouldn't want to spend £5 on. You might not like it. Okay, if it's a yellow sticker, you can experiment, and that's what the girls do in the story. So basically, we have the bully. Let me just go back here. We have the bully, who is Kyla. And as often happens with kids, and again, it shows the dynamics of bullying, Kyla herself is experiencing hardship. And this is why she takes photos of Megan, first of all, buying the yellow sticker stuff. Then when things get worse at the food bank, they take photos of her in her uniform to literally shame her on social media. Okay. So really, and again, I don't know if anybody noticed this, it was very subtle. I purposely made the bully blonde, okay? Because, in all these stories, the blonde protagonist is always the popular, kind girl. No, I had the blonde as the bully, okay? Despite me and my daughter both being blonde, I was like, that's it. Let's cut out this, the blonde angelic stuff. So we had the bully was blonde. And basically, by writing this contemporary story about bullying, I was hoping really to be able to connect with teenagers around the world. Maybe I'm hoping for too much. Maybe they're just going to read it and think, yeah, it's just another story. But I think, as Jane said, even if you only get to one child who's having a hard time, okay, then it's worth it, isn't it? And I thought it was nice too. We had the little sister, trying to protect her from that. That is often the case in families. Big brothers and big sisters, they take on too much. And in fact, in the end, also my Megan, as I come to think of her, she has to confide in her mum about the situation. Just a little bit on the technical stuff that you did ask me to mention as well. Obviously, Jane uses those Cambridge handbooks, which I'm familiar with, but I don't write stories for young children. I write a lot of stuff for Pearson over here in Italy for the state school market. An interesting book you may, I don't know if you can get your hands on this, is in Japan. A book I did a couple of years ago was called Reading for Citizenship. Now, it comes with I Discover, and actually, we are going to be handing this out in our goodie bags at the conference next weekend in Rome. Pearson have decided to donate a copy of this to the people who attend our course. So I know you didn't ask me to talk about this particularly, but you may find it useful because it is an extract from a reader, basically. It does the 3 years of middle school over here in Italy. So age 11 to 14, basically, is the target. Okay. You have a little about the book, about the topic, some exercises, and there's always an active citizenship. So this one is from a reader called Maisie and the Dolphin. It's a Pearson reader. The active citizenship, of course, is about species of dolphins, marine life at risk of extinction, behaviors that are good and bad, leaving rubbish on the beach. Some facts here: nearly 1/3 of freshwater fish are at risk of extinction. Why? Improper waste disposal. So I've always written about social issues. Okay, like Jane, I do my readers for Ellie because we've kind of got a good format. They give me, I just do what I want, basically, as long as I fit in with their guidelines, which for A2 level are 800 head words. And luckily for me, the editor sends me the list, okay, based on the, the European language levels, the CERFs, okay? She sends those to me, can use these words. Obviously, I can use anything that's come before that in A1. And then we have this wonderful thing called a glossary. So I do try and throw in a little bit of real English, which again is so important to me. When kids learn English, it becomes almost laughable because we teach them, hello, my name is Sarah. What's your name? My name is Marco. Where do you? Okay, kids do not interact like that. All right. So it's a little bit one of my bugbears, and I've written tons of stuff also over the years, like in Italian, we call it a libro ponte. It was a special book that would help kids go from elementary to middle school level with their English due over the summer. And we filled it with real English. I said, kids don't introduce themselves. First, they start to play. Hey, throw me that ball, catch that, do this. Then they say, oh yeah, I'm Mako. Okay, so lots and lots of real English. And finally, because I think I'm going to go over my time if I'm not careful, finally, I have a teenage daughter, and she was a really important part of this process. I wanted to show her and also get her feedback, okay, on stories. And she helped me come up with the names for the characters. So because she felt involved, she envisaged with me how these people would look, okay? And then we were able to describe them to the illustrator. And also I gave her the first draft, and it was really amazing. That was when I realized, a bit like Jane, oh wow, perhaps I've written a story that works. My daughter, a teenager, laughed out loud when she read some of the things. And I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something here. So that is about it, really. Obviously, tried to make the dialogues as authentic as possible, trying to stick to the grammar and the vocab, but in as a natural context as possible. It isn't easy, but with a good illustrator, which I was lucky enough to have, you can get the meaning across to kids and hopefully they can read it. Okay, that is me more or less done, I think. So I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see you all properly. Okay. Let me see if I'm going to get out of this. Cutie. Okay. I'm going to interrompi. Okay. Sorry, my computer has its settings in Italian, so I'm speaking English, reading my things to do in Italian. Okay, and we should be back to our full screen. Okay, if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, or any comments, whatever.
Hey, thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions from the audience? Sandra.
No question.
Always
I have
me.
a question. But yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Sandra.
Paul, no, Paul, go for it.
Oh, okay. So, Sarah, yeah, I read your book, and I really liked it. And
oh, thank you.
and I'm so glad that you're focusing on, well, you're doing original fiction as opposed to retold classics, which we see a lot of in graded readers. And yeah, I really felt like I was in the head of a sort of a bullied teenager when I read it, and how you do it a lot in the first person was amazing. So I'm looking forward to recommending it to my students.
That's lovely. Thank you.
I'm just hoping it's going to be on X Reading or somewhere, because I actually went out.
Paul is trying to put it on. Did you?
Sorry.
Oh, wow. Thank you. You're the first one I've met who's actually bought the book. I've given one to my mum and my dad, but I don't think that counts.
Yeah, and I don't often buy grade readers myself. So yeah.
Well, that's lovely to hear. Thank you.
So did you say it's going to be on X Reading?
Yeah, Paul.
Great,
Paul and I have been in touch. Again, I only recently discovered X Reading, and I'm now a huge fan because it gives students that freedom to choose. And something very important, you know, I have to practice what I preach. Yeah, if some people can go out and buy the book, great, but I want everyone to be able to access the reading material, and not everyone can do that, okay? So it's great that they can just go out there, the pressure's off. You know, they don't have to ask their parents to buy them a book. And if that then nurtures in them a love of reading, which is what it's all about, okay, then great, one day they'll go out and be adults who read. What more can we ask for, you know? So I think that's the key thing. Okay, I do have another one that you'll hopefully be able to find on X Reading soon as well. The Kid from Kabul, which I did the other year, okay, focuses on different issues. Obviously, you know, I haven't been to Afghanistan, I haven't been to Kabul, so I brought the guy over to England, so again, I could put in a little bit of that sense of community, which I think is what is so important to me. And that's why I think Manchester deserves a light being shined on it. I go home and, I go to the chippy, and obviously, parents are embarrassing. They talk, don't they? And I went to my local Chinese takeaway a couple of years ago, and the guy said to me, "Oh, your book, well done." And yeah, your dad came in, and oh my God, my dad's actually taken the yellow sticker girl to the local pub to show his friends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but people are genuinely, interested. And also I think because that one, despite our social problems at the moment, the UK is in a bit of a, that sense of community up in the north, I'm sure in some neighborhoods too down south. Obviously, my experience was of living in London, in like the centre, working there. That's kind of not a real reflection. So yeah, I'm just really glad that you said you were able to get into the head of Megan, because that's how I felt. I felt I was Megan, when I was writing it. So that's lovely to hear. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Sarah. I look forward to recommending it to my learners.
Thank you very much.
Right. Next question from Sandra.
I just wanted to say I also really enjoyed Kid from Kabul. It was really full of heart, and I thought that was really nice having the story of people from other countries living in a foreign environment for them. I think it was really well done as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any upcoming readers? That's what I wanted to ask you.
I do. Now, they did ask me to write one last year as well, but unfortunately, with all my different stuff going on, I wasn't able to do a reader. They've asked me to do one this year, which it's going to be completely different again, a different kind of social issue, again, based on what I see happening in the UK. And I'll just give you a little hint. It's to do with the fact that in the UK, libraries. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm also in a local library group here where we, a group of us, every couple of months, every month, whatever, on a Saturday morning, we go in and we read to kids. So obviously my other group members are Italian, and they kind of roped me into joining this group on the premise that I would be reading in English. And then the first day they're like, we're missing someone for this story about Carnival. And I was like, well, what are you looking at me for? I'm not going to read aloud in Italian. They're like, oh, but don't worry about it. So I did do it. And now, it was Halloween the other week. I did a Halloween story. I don't know if you know it. It's not a graded reader, but again, I adapted it. Funny Bones, it's called. It's a bit of a classic in English. So I did the Funny Bones for the kids. So I think libraries should be at the heart of any community. And, because I really believe, it said that on my slide, and I really think education is the only way we can ever really get any real change. And we are currently, as I'm sure it's the same where you guys are, we are currently fighting, let's say, the incorrect use, I'm going to say, of social media and technology, because used in the right way, it is amazing. But we currently have kids who think, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a TikToker. Oh my God. Okay. So reading also opens the world up to them. So the next one will be something to do with libraries. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, that's really good. I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Just I've just here now, so but I watched the recording. I'm sorry, I'm late. Getting letting me know about the timing.
You missed me singing your praises, Michael. I mentioned how I was inspired by your readers.
Maybe my ears were tingling then. That's
maybe that's why you connected. Thanks for coming in anyway. It's nice to see you. Should we would you like us to just mention about extensive reading in Italy that we're setting up? Because I said at the beginning, Michael, that we're going down to Rome, aren't we, next weekend? And Noriko said it would be kind of cool to know what we're planning to do here in Italy with extensive reading. Do you want to say a few words on that? Or do you want me to do it? I don't want to throw you in there, sorry.
Well, we did a launch webinar, which went pretty well earlier on in the year. I got quite a few teachers interested. And then we've just tried to keep the ball rolling by doing things like happy hour events and things a little bit inspired by what you guys do. Really just trying to create a kind of a casual environment where people can talk about these, talk about reading. But this is quite important because we aim to sort of become official next year, early on next year. And so we're getting together as a group physically face to face as well. So, you know, Sarah will be there, I'll be there, and some others in the group. So, and we plan to sort of talk about, you know, why Italy? Why do we need an extensive reading association in Italy? And we're all going to be there. And I think it'll be quite important. But it's the first of many events that we're going to hold until we get like official status. And then, so yeah, it's
and we're quite lucky, aren't we? Because we've got a really good group. All the members bring something different to the table, I think, and that's really important, you know.
Yes,
so,
we need you need like a core group of people who are enthusiastic, and I think we're lucky enough to have that. So that we've got a chance, you know, we've got a chance.
Definitely. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it.
Okay, we have 2 hands up for questions. Start with Greg.
I love the hopefulness of libraries and education. I grew up in small town Canada with 2 TV stations. And when I became a university student, we started getting cable TV from rural USA and then finally from Detroit. And I couldn't believe the horrors that I was hearing just on the nightly news. I think it's wonderful to hear the backstory behind the development of the stories. But I do wonder, especially maybe more in our English as a second foreign other language roles, where the foundation in terms of ed psych might not be such a large part of people's graduate or doctoral studies, where we fit as educators in terms of exposing students to materials that have their, you know, author's kind of purpose, but seeing it through the lens of the learners. Now, of course, they're far more exposed to whatever there is on social media, but I wonder where our responsibilities and how we can manage introducing some of these social issues without it, by nature of the closed community of the classroom, becoming a social issue for the student whose father just lost their job and can only buy yellow sticker items and sees that as a direct negative reflection of their own stressful immediate life. I mean, other people who are maybe interviewing, you know, incoming high school students in 2024 are being reminded of some careful questions to not ask incoming students that might isolate them from a certain area, or, you know, these kind of things. I don't know, other people have maybe heard this story too of, you know, youth in Japan coming up with, well, you know, we don't have racism in Japan because we don't have that many Black people. So if we're starting at that kind of common denominator and we have these materials that are really reaching deeply into the human potential for growth, do you have a comment on our role as educators in terms of which eggshell to you know, tread lightly on? And
well, I would certainly say that it's always the role of the teacher to know their students. So before introducing any kind of material that deals with sensitive issues, because you're right, they are sensitive issues, okay, I think that each teacher has to take that responsibility. So I would be the first to say, if you teach in an area where you're aware that some of your students come from underprivileged backgrounds, maybe, perhaps don't use the yellow sticker girl. Okay, I would be the first one to say that, because you don't want to trigger any responses. And I think that as a teacher, you always have to be responsible and put your students' needs first. Okay, the same where really the kid from Kabul, are you going to use that with a class where you've got a couple of immigrant students who are not yet integrated? No, maybe wait, give it a year, and then they might feel able to share their story. I think it's always easier to share something when you've come out the other side. And that is true also for adults, isn't it? You know, if you are going through a bad time, you don't want to talk even to your friends about it sometimes. It's only when you found that inner strength that you are ready to accept. So I think you raised a really, really good point there, Greg. So thank you for that. And I would say that it's like everything at the discretion of the teacher. Okay.
Thank you for your comment.
That's what I would say. No, thank you.
Thank you. And we also have a question from Pat.
Okay, mine's not so much a question, just kind of a thank you. Like your idea of kind of breaking down some of the stereotypes of kind of a glamorous UK.
Thank you.
That I think can be really helpful for students in general in Japan who are kind of a little bit isolated from other viewpoints. And like Greg said, the idea that Japan doesn't have racism. Also, a lot of students would say Japan doesn't have poverty, which is not true. But kind of breaking down that one glamorous stereotype of life in the UK can be one bridge to students being able to look at, well, what's really happening in our country. Because a lot of kind of SDGs related stuff in Japan, especially in the media, in the classroom, it's something that's not here. It's something overseas.
Yeah.
So it's something in a third world country.
Isn't it? The other. And that's when we get the they're perpetuated then, the social issues, because as long as we feel that they don't affect us, we don't feel that we need to deal with them. And the whole point of having the United Nations goals is so that we face these challenges together. So I think you've made a really good point there, Patrick. Thank you. That in fact, it can help kids also to perhaps appreciate their own reality and therefore work harder to make that kind of a reality possible for other people. You know, it's a case, isn't it, of the grass is always greener. As I say, I have a wonderful life here in Italy, but people are genuinely surprised that I would ever choose to leave England, because they have been led to believe that England is, wow, you know, the land of hope and glory. It's still a very colonial kind of thing. And the same can be said in England when we talk about America. Oh, wow. But I have a friend who lives in America and she's like, you know what? It's not that great. It's just normal life. We're all in the same boat. And I think that's something that we have to get across, really. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we also have one more question from Chris in the chat. And it says, should readers include clear educational aims? Does this make them attractive to learners?
I think this is something that I mentioned at the beginning, isn't it? That we have to be very, very careful with how we suggest reading, okay? Because I think there should always be educational aims that we as educators are aware of, but the kids shouldn't necessarily be aware of them, okay? And I know there's been a lot of debate, and it's a tricky one about where we put activities in books. So Ellie, who I write the readers for, they put activities at the end of every unit. Do I agree with that? No comment, okay? It depends what our aims are. Is it better to have them at the back of the book so you can read the story without any interruptions and then choose? There are, of course, pros and cons for everything. But I, again, would say as a teacher who knows their students, how do your kids feel? If they're quite competitive, okay, you can put them into teams to do the activities. Therefore, it doesn't become an exercise we have to do and fill in the gaps. Okay, here's a piece of paper. All right, do it as like a running activity, you know, like, and the teacher can read out the questions and the kids have to write their answer and run and stick it on the board. You know, you can do whatever you want. When you have material, I think as a teacher, you know your students, you know your learning aims, you know what your kids are good at, what they enjoy. I think, as always, adapt. That is the key word, I think, in any classroom. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
All right. So, is there any other questions or comments that you want to say? Because we are kind of going over time. But it's fairly nice to have questions and comments.
Yeah, I was really pleased, you know, to be able to answer those.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Hey, let's say thank you to Sarah. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you to all of you. It really was a pleasure. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again in the future.
Yes, and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so following our plans, we are going to introduce other books from the LLL award-winning books. And first will be Four Friends and the Hunter from Helbling, Helbling, sorry. And that will be a little presentation from Leslie Ito, which will be a recording. So, yep. Here we go.
Category. Now, for teachers of very young learners, we're going to consider very different things for a book rather than if you're teaching on university level, because we're probably going to be using this for shared reading activities, because children at this age, they're not going to be independently reading so much. They can't even do it in their own language. So for this book, a lot of the appeal of this book is, of course, the illustrations, the animals as characters. Children love animals as characters. The plot is very simple. You have these four friends, a crow, a mouse, a deer, and a frog in the forest. The deer is very concerned about the hunter, and then they wait the next day. The deer is not there, and then the four friends work together to free the deer who has been caught in the hunter's net. So the story is very simple, and it also, you know, promotes a very important theme, which is of the value of friendship. Alison Hasegawa gave a wonderful presentation at JOLT, talking about how, you know, the carefully selected readers for very young learners can be used in different activities, you know, to promote, you know, universal values of, you know, a friendship, or, you know, just, you know, trying to grow up to be a good person. So anyway, I really recommend this story. This would be great. Very, very interesting to point out the different things and, you know, interest the young learners in this. There are also many activities that you can do. You could turn this into a drama activity. If children wanted to check this out on their own, there are games and also an MP3 file so that they can have the audio, which is really, really important to have audio for readers for very young learners. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, it's a recording, so we can't have any questions. So we'd like to go on with introducing the other book. The second book, or the fourth book, will be Brooklyn from Penguin Random House UK, and Sandra will talk about it.
Actually, first I'm going to talk about that was the very young learners section. This is the young learners section, which is also Thinking Train book, The Girl and the Magpie, which was written by Herbert Puckton and Gavin Biggs, who have previously won awards for other titles in previous years. And it's the story of a little girl called Faye who has a best friend who's just happens to be a beautiful black and white magpie called Maggie. And her brother Jonathan doesn't like Maggie because she thinks Maggie is a thief. And then one day Faye loses a bracelet, and then Maggie isn't around, so she's wonders whether her brother Jonathan was right all along about her friend. So it really talks to, in a similar way to the previous book, about like friendship and loyalty, collaboration, those kind of key things which are so important for kids. And as with the other Thinking Train series, it's very colourful, very engaging book. The pictures are wonderful, and you can see they're just full of colour. They also have a craft section at the back of every book, which is quite fun. So Make a Treasure Box is the one for this. And that's around a Yomi Yasusa level of about 0.5 or 0.6. So they really are quite a wonderful series. And then moving along to the winner of the adolescent and adult intermediate section, which was the Brooklyn by Colm Toibin, adapted by Kate Williams for Penguin readers. Kate did a fabulous job of adapting quite a long and complex tale for language learners. And it's the story of Ilis, a young Irish woman who gets a job in Brooklyn, New York. She leaves her family in Ireland, travels to a new country. It's an exciting adventure. She meets lots of people, learns new things, but also misses Ireland. And then when she meets someone special, she has to choose between past and future. So it's a very compelling read. And it really does, I think, appeal to perhaps young adults or people who are leaving home for the first time. Seeing the possibilities of what life could be is very exhilarating, but also very confusing, and it's captured very well in this book. And this is a level 5 Penguin reader, a Cepha B1 level, and Yomi Yasusa level of around 3.9. So those are those two books.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, you were going to introduce two books. Right. Any comments for Sandra for the two books? Oh, Paul.
A quick question. Does the Penguin book have illustrations or images?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay.
It has sort of the style illustration.
Okay, so not from the movie.
No, nothing. I know the cover is definitely the movie, but no, it's got just black and white illustrations, like that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, a lot of the old Penguin readers did the same thing.
Yeah, even though this is quite a new one.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'd like to move on to the last book, which is Animal Farm from StandFor, and it will be introduced from Jackie.
Right. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I've got a book. This one sort of needs no introduction. It's Animal Farm. So retooled, of course, and done in a really good way. As you know, you all know the story. So, but there's very subtle changes that happen throughout the book. And it's done really well with language, that it's not repetitive, but you can sense the changes that are happening, and also the emphasis that they put on critical thinking. That there are some points in the story, of course, that they say, we don't really remember why we had that rule, but there was some reason, or they wanted to make an argument if they could come up with something. So just this idea that it's important, right, to think really critically about what's happening and to question and to not just kind of accept what's happening. Like, that rule used to be different, right? It was different, right? But I don't know. So so I thought that was really brought out in the story quite a lot. Also, the artwork is really good. Here's one story, if you can see it. There's lots of animals in this picture, but the really big ones, of course, are the pigs and the goats. And the cows and the chickens are very small in the bottom. So there's quite a lot of nice symbolism, even in the artwork that's in the book. So, yeah. I really enjoyed it. It's a story that we all know, but also really important kind of social issues, right? The powerful versus the powerless, and creating power structures and such. So anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jackie.